Today I wanted to talk with you about Anthologie Quilt. I've been getting a lot of questions and hopefully this video will answer most of those questions. So Anthologie Quilt is a sampler quilt, and what a sampler means, in case you don't know, is that it has a lot of different kinds of blocks in it. The blocks are just going to run the gamut. There's just so many different kinds. Before you get tired of a block, we move on to the next. So there's never any moment where you're like, oh my God, I can't make this block anymore. There's not going to be any of those moments. The pattern has two big, deep dives. One of them is Applique and the other is Dresden Plates. For the Applique section, it goes into 3 or 4 different methods of applique, and you're meant to choose the one you like the best. I go through each method and show you pros and cons and what I like about it. So one part that has been confusing, if you've been seeing pictures of my quilt, let me show you a picture. You can see at the very bottom, which is called Inspiration Collage, at the very bottom it shows applique butterflies and applique flowers. But if you look at the graphics on the quilt, it's not showing anything there but the background blocks. That's because you're supposed to choose what you want to applique. So you could choose anything. You could be similar to mine, or you could get really, really creative and come up with your own theme and do your own thing. Do check out the hashtags on Instagram, and it's hashtag Anthologie Quilt. Anthologie is spelled with an I-E. You can really see what some of my testers have done, what some other quilters have done from the past. It's just tons of inspiration to get you going. The other deep dive in the pattern is about Dresden plates. And if you've never made a Dresden plate, if you think they're scary, the pattern goes through beginning to end on how to make it. There's video tutorials along the way, and there's several different methods of how you can put their faces on. These are their faces. Or centers or circles, whatever you want to call them. There's several methods of how to do that. I've got the pattern labeled as an intermediate pattern, but hearing from my testers, they really think that an adventurous or confident beginner could handle this pattern, especially since there's video tutorials throughout. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to walk you through the quilt, let you see it piece by piece, so you know if you want to make it, and then we'll talk a little bit about some of the supplies. The quilt starts out with Inspiration Collage, and it goes through and tells you how to make your background squares, and then it lets you applique at will, so you can put any scene you want to in this section. And you can really get creative in this section. My butterflies were cut out of pillows that I purchased. I just cut the butterflies out and then stitched them right down onto the quilt, and all of the flowers were cut from fabric, and I chose the adhesive method that's discussed in the quilt. It's all raw edge, and you can get a good look at it there. From Inspiration Collage, we move on to our 9 patch blocks, which are here, here, and here. After that, we make a Le Fleur block. There's only one of her in the quilt. Next, we move on to our flying geese, which are here and here. The pattern uses the 4 at a time flying geese method. So you'll end up with no waste, and they come out perfectly to size. From there, we make our attic windows, which are here and here. Next, we move on to Dresden Bohemia, which is here, here, and here. And if you've never made a Dresden before, you will definitely know how after this quilt. After the Dresdens, we make our mod tulips, and mod tulips are all along this edge. From there, we move on to our arrowheads, which are here, and then we work on half square triangles, which are here. After that, it is Crazy Plant Lady, which is here and here. The whole time that you're making the blocks, you're also building the quilt. So it's not left till the very end to put together. You do it the whole time you're working on it. Let's talk about supplies. We'll start with fabric since it's the best. The pattern asks for 18 to 25 fat quarters for your foreground fabrics. Just in case you don't know, foreground is everything you see that I have on my quilt in color, and background is everything in my quilt that you see that is low volume. You could, of course, do solid white, whatever you want to do. That is a pretty big range. So you could get by with 18 fat quarters, but if you like a lot of variety like I do, you may want to beef that number up to 25. I think I actually probably used more than 25 different fat quarters. That's okay though. If you need help choosing your fabrics, we have bundles available at my fabric shop, Meander and Make, that you can just buy a bundle and just get going. Since the pattern has several different applique methods that require different products, it's going to really depend on which method you go with which products or supplies that you need to buy. But let's say that you're choosing the easiest method in the pattern, and you're also doing the exact same thing, which I did, which was I used the adhesive. I used the Heat and Bond. There is several other brands that are very similar to Heat and Bond that you may be more familiar with, and if that's the case, definitely use the one that you like the best. I'm just familiar with Heat and Bond, so that's why that's the one I've listed in the pattern. We sell the adhesive at Meander and Make, so you could buy it with your pattern or your fabric bundles. We sell it in these little packets of 1 yard and 1/4, but we also sell it by the yard, which is actually the way I prefer to buy my own adhesive, is by the yard. The next supply the pattern suggests is your Dresden ruler. Now the pattern comes with a template, so you don't have to go and buy a ruler, but making a Dresden with a ruler is so much easier than a paper template. So if you can buy the ruler, I definitely would. If you buy nothing else, I would get the ruler. It's just way helpful. It also comes with this little pointer here, and it really helps those blades pop out those points much easier than you can do with a pair of scissors or something like that. I have stuck a pair of scissors straight through and made a hole in that Dresden plate, so I really like my wooden pointer. So quilters have a lot of different methods for half square triangles. So you may be sitting on a ruler that you love, or you may just not, you may be making them without a ruler. So I know there's a lot of different methods. If you've been following me for a while, you know that I love the Quilt in a Day triangle square up ruler. It makes half square triangles really easy, and I just love making them this way. I'm pretty obsessive about my half square triangles, and I love this ruler. I don't use anything else for making them. You may need it, but you may not. There's one block in the quilt, it's the Mod Tulips, that gets trimmed down. I think besides the half square triangles, it's the only block that gets trimmed down in this quilt, and it is so much easier with a 6.5 inch square ruler. If you have a 12.5 inch ruler, which I know most quilters do, of course you could use that, but I really like to use this. It makes things really easy. But again, it only gets used once in the quilt, so I'll let you decide if you want to run out and buy it or not. So in Crazy Plant Lady, the stem is made with embroidery, and the pattern does go into how to embroider. I like to embroider with number 8 thread, and I know that if you've been following along with me for a while, you know how much I love this thread. I use it for embroidery, I use it for hand quilting, and I use it for my chunky binding. I've got a big collection of it. I'm a very big fan of this thread. It's a big thread, it's size 8, and it really pops out on your quilt. I also used it for the applique method in my Dresdens, and the pattern goes into that too. If you use number 8, you're probably going to want a Sashiko needle. This needle has a really big eye. It's a really big needle, and it makes putting this big thread through that eye really easy. Okay, I think that is it for supplies. The pattern is going to go into several other supplies that you may or may not need because of the different methods, and there's some extra supplies that you can get that you might want. Those are pretty much just the basics. I just want to be very, very clear in saying that you could definitely not get any of those supplies and still make this quilt by choosing different methods or not doing everything the very easiest of ways. Those supplies will just make this quilt easier with less time. You don't have to have them. So I don't want that supply list to scare anybody away. So I remember being a beginner quilter on a very tight budget, and I didn't have hardly anything, so it really bothered me when patterns would ask for all this stuff. So I hope that's clear enough. So I think that's it. So I hope I didn't leave anything out. I really hope you decide to make Anthologie Quilt. If you do and you want to show it off on Instagram, please tag me at Southern Charm Quilts. I love seeing other quilters making my patterns. So bye.